candidates for Senate. Mr. Nelson, we'll start with you for your statement.
Thank you. My name is David Nelson, and I'm running for Idaho Senate District 5. I grew up on a wheat farm in Genesee, Idaho. I went to the University of Idaho and got an engineering degree, and eventually started a software company that I was able to bring back to Idaho. I was inspired to run by my father, Jay Nelson, who was a commissioner in Latah County about 30 years ago. He took me out door knocking, and I went to different political things with him, and he was a quiet problem solver. He had a real ability to be civil to many people, to all people, and to bring people together to solve problems. And I want to bring that capability to the Idaho legislature. I think it's very important that we work across the aisle to solve problems, that we don't let tribal instincts drive us apart, and that a representative listen to all the constituents in the district. I can't say, well, we will always agree, but we need to find those zones of agreement and work together to solve problems. A couple things I'm particularly concerned about in this year's election that I hear when I door knock all the time, and I share the concerns. One is education. We don't fund education particularly well in Idaho, and I would especially like to help get more money into teacher salaries. I'd like to fund the continue funding the career ladder, but get money also to the experienced teachers who are left out of the career ladder. And we need to do more workforce training and higher education. The other item that you heard a lot about tonight, but I'll mention it again, is Proposition 2. We need to pass that bill. We need to pass the initiative, and you need to elect legislators who will implement it fairly and fully to your wishes in the Idaho legislature. Again, I'm David Nelson, and I would appreciate your vote on November 6th.
Senator Foreman.
Good evening, folks, and thanks for coming out to this event tonight. I am Dan Foreman, and I'm your Idaho State Senator for District 5. I've been your senator for 2 years. Short bit of background history: I'm a retired 30-year Air Force officer, an aviator, and combat veteran, retired Moscow PD officer of almost 12 years service. Live outside of Potlatch with my wife for 44 years, who's right there in the red shirt. We have 7 children. One's a doctor, one's a lawyer, 3 are military officers, and 2 are business owners. And we're very proud of all of them. They're good, contributing citizens to the state of Idaho. I ran for office as a Christian conservative Republican because, indeed, that's what I am. The cornerstone of my legislative career so far has been my proposed legislation in support of the pro-life initiative. Approximately 1,400 babies are killed by abortion each year in Idaho. It is needless, wasteful, costly, and immoral. I will continue to support the pro-life movement. I was also successful in writing and having passed into law the Idaho Free Market Insurance Act, making it much easier to purchase health and accident insurance across state lines. This should introduce more competition and lower premiums. Throughout my legislative career, I've been a watchdog against excessive state spending and necessary growth. I voted no on approximately 40% of the spending bills in the Senate. I voted no on every bill that would have hampered small business or imposed unnecessary fees on Idahoans trying to earn a living. I intend to continue to work for a smaller, more efficient, and responsive state government during the upcoming legislative session. Thanks again for attending this evening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cannon.
Hi, I'm Margie Gannon, and I'm running for District 5A for the legislature. It's a position I already am seated in, kind of an odd way to get there, but when Paulette Jordan left to run her gubernatorial race, I was placed in that seat. Kind of an odd way to get into politics, but you know, it fits my personality perfectly. I just fall into things, and I like it that way. I lived in Benoit County and have for 40 years. I think that's a good thing because Latah and Benoit are the same district. I have, however, over the last 9 months, fallen in love with Latah County. I think my husband is figuring that out as I bring home houses for sale pamphlets and leave them on the kitchen table while I'm knocking doors. So I'm getting two things done. I'm passionate about education. I was on the St. Mary's School Board for 16 years, and I spent 2 years on the St. Mary's City Council, where I was in charge of water and sewer. And I know that the boys on the club put me on that because they thought she won't last a week, but I fooled them. And now they come to me and say, do you want to come test the concrete before we get it laid? And I go, sure, I'll be right over. There isn't a challenge I don't feel, at least at this point in life, I can't handle. I feel strongly about Proposition 2, not just for the humane reasons, but because I think that it will save rural hospitals, and that's a big one for me. I also care about the infrastructure in Idaho, and especially North Idaho, that depends so much on these roads and bridges for our economy. And so those are just some of the things, and I hope we can touch on some more things as the evening goes along. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman.
Good evening. I hope everybody's got their hoses put away, because it looks like it's going to be another cold one tonight. My name is Bill Gosley, and I am a candidate for District 5A House of Representatives. I bring to this race a unique blend of qualifications and experiences. 24 years as a naval officer, leader, combat pilot, test pilot. I know what these kinds of situations lead to. I went back to school at 46 and got my PhD in education from our good university, the University of Idaho. I served on the Moscow School Board. I served on the State Charter School Commission, where I chaired it for 7 years. I also served on the State Board of Education. I know education. I did, like many of you, I started a new career. I was a financial consultant for over 450 people, and then we raised their assets to over 450 million. I see a lot of you out there today. I'm also a member of the Governor's Task Force on Veterans, Active Duty, and Families, North Indian Council. We look at what issues are occurring for our veterans in the state and what we can do to solve those issues. I've also served as a CASA guardian ad litem for up to 9 foster children. If you want to see the problems that we're seeing within our social system, be a foster parent, be a guardian ad litem. I've also served on the Veterans Treatment Court. I'm a battle buddy for a gentleman who had an unfortunate situation, and he became a ward of the court. This is an alternative program. I'm also a small business owner. I raise Scottish Highlanders, and I have several for sale, like 5 of them. I look forward to your questions and demonstrating my qualification further. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sorensen.
Good evening. My name is Lorraine Sorensen. I am running for Idaho Legislature, seat 5B. I live here in Moscow, actually walking distance from here at 414 North Hayes Street. I moved here in 2003 for, as Kathy LaFortune said, the usual reason. I was in love with a guy. His name was John Kroc. He was the founder of Hyper Sled Sports, which is still being run here in Moscow. When he passed away in 2014, he was only 58 years old. He passed because of a condition that could have been detected early, could have had a different outcome, but he was afraid of how much it cost to go to the doctor, and he didn't have good insurance. And so I've got that as a fire in my belly about Proposition 2. After John passed away, I stayed in Moscow because I fell in love with this community. I fell in love with the out of doors, the wide open spaces of Latah County, Benewah County, and Idaho in general. The things that are important to me are health care, including Proposition 2, including rural health care, and the education of our next generation of Idaho physicians. I believe in education from age 4 all the way through university. It needs to be adequately funded. It needs to have the physical infrastructure, including broadband, including IT and libraries, so that everybody can excel. And for those who don't want to go to college, I'm really proud of our state for putting the Magnet Center for Career and Tech Education in Lewiston. I want to see more of that. I also would like to develop our workforce by making it possible for entrepreneurs and businesses to locate and thrive in northern Idaho so we can share in the growth of this state. Finally, I love our public lands. Hundreds of millions of dollars come into
Thank you very much. Thank you. Representative Nelson Troy.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Caroline Nelson-Troy. I hope you're going to save the best for last here. It's an honor to represent you in Boise. And my cousin is here, and so I'm very pleased to have him here. In the past 4 years, I had to write this all down so I could remember it. I've carried 34 bills, 30 of which are now law. Many of them had their start here in District 5, and I wanted to share a few of those with you. Actually, in honor of my cousin, one of my bills was allowing 529 savings accounts for Idahoans living on Medicaid disability through the Americans for a Better Living Experience Act. Another bill allows hospitals like Gritman, who actually requested this legislation, to recruit both specialists and family practice doctors through an expanded J-1 visa program. I work towards raising the amount that can be contributed into a 529 college savings program from $2,000 to $6,000. Provided clarity to the Department of Education guidelines requiring annual reviews before offering a renewal on teacher contracts. Worked with the students at the U of I to pass medical amnesty. Required gatekeeper training for all school employees, from bus drivers to librarians to teachers, on suicide prevention. I've also voted in support of all bills that increase funding to public education and universities, adding at least $100 million in new funding every single year for the past 4 years. The job's not finished, but we're making progress. There are some highlights which you don't often hear about. Idaho is first in the nation for year-to-year increases in teacher and school administrative pay, second for year-to-year increase in state funding for higher education, fifth for college-ready students, sixth for year-to-year funding increases for K through 12, and 16th in the nation for percentage of total spending on K through 12 schools. With your continued support, I will work to find common sense solutions facing you and your neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much.